This is Uncommonly Remarkable. We have surprisingly casual discussions about the lives and notable accomplishments of community leaders, entrepreneurs, and everyday folks like you and me. Think of this podcast as an opportunity to learn something new and to pick up on an entrepreneurial tip or two through open conversation. I'm Artis Beatty. I'm a doctor of optometry and the chief medical officer for My Eye Doctor OD. Though we will inevitably touch on topics within my area of expertise, the opinions and conversations held here are separate from my work with My Eye Doctor. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show. It is fantastic to have you. Thanks for taking a few minutes to sit down and talk with me today.
My pleasure, my old friend. I mean, we can say that now.
We literally can say that. Like when we first met each other, a little bit less gray, a little bit less experience.
You still have more hair though than I do. That's annoying to me. I'm combing it forward. I'm doing the Trump right now. I got the comb forward.
Man, you can't always predict it. But I tell my barber all the time, at least it's up there, even though it's turning gray.
Agreed.
We recently got to run into each other, and it'd been the first time we saw each other in a very, very long time. And we started talking a little bit about what you're doing today and your company and your work, and it was fascinating. So immediately I was like, oh, we got to come and tell people about this thing. So I'm excited to get into better and talk a little bit about what that is and how you've built it. But I guess we have to start at the beginning though. So you are trained as a chiropractor.
Correct.
And from being a chiropractor and dealing with patients and then moving through your day to day, you just weren't seeing patients in an office like a traditional chiropractor, even from the beginning, even when I met you. So talk a little bit about how you set up your practice and the things that you were doing.
Sure. So anything that I've come up, it's nothing I've never come up with anything. I just come away with things. And prior to meeting you, I had got out of chiropractor school, moved up to New York, and I wasn't aware that different states had different billing practices and coding and case management. You just go to school to learn what you're doing, but no one teaches you about the business side of it or any of the billing that comes with it. So I did buy a house, and I practiced out of the front of the house, and I rented out the back half of the house with my friend, a partner of mine, Dr. Chris, who we went to school with, and we actually grew up together. And it was interesting because here I am. I had a practice. I was living at home with my parents. I owned my own home, but living at home with my parents just to make sure the rent was covered and keep it going. And the person that was renting the back half of the house was also our front desk person because she was a single mom, so she could drop the son off at daycare, go get care, and then come back to the house to do the office work. And then when he got home, she could do the rest of the billing and management at night while he was there.
Amazing.
Interesting enough, she's still with me today. So over 20 years later, and what with me from business to business and basically handling all the HR and benefits. Her name's Susan. But what I learned very quickly was that I didn't know how to run a practice. I didn't know the billing and management. We had to figure that out. And also, how was I going to get people to come in? I loved people. I was a guy that, when I walked into a place, I wanted to hug everybody, know everybody. Everyone would say, oh, he'll be fine in business. He's a guy that likes to be the mayor of a place.
Yeah.
And yet I was not having success. We were barely getting enough people through, trying to just use the word of mouth. I mean, back then there was no internet. So I was literally taking business cards and handing them out or putting them on poster boards inside the pizza place down the street. But the people that did come through, I started enjoying the work, but not fully. And interesting enough, to get the lights on too, I took a job 3 days a week in Brooklyn. This could be a whole show on itself. And the clinic was owned by the Russian Mafia.
What?
Yes. So that also hurt my confidence because I started working on people there and no one got any better. And Dr. Chris, my friend, who I told you, he got out before me, he got me the job and he said, hey, what don't you get here? They're not trying to get better. They're here for the car accident case and, get a payout.
Holy crap. That's something to think about. Particularly if you're pride yourself on, I've helped these people. And now you've got this practice where people are coming in and they're not getting better and you don't know why.
Agreed.
And you're not doing what you want to do.
Oh, it was really deflating. And I remember, sometimes also saying, so, okay, where were you in the car? And two people were in the same spot. I'm like, so were you on their lap or, you didn't have your story straight? I mean, it was such a unique experience. I became really friendly with the Russian Mafia people that were running the place. They'd just hired out all these modalities, physical therapy, acupuncture. So what I came away with was working with different modalities and seeing how these these different people treated these different, cases. I also came out with that they started inviting me to their lunch, and it was a closed door.
Uh-huh.
And I had always watched them go in there for lunch. So all the people that were Russian would go into this room and have lunch, and none of the other folks were really invited. But I became friends with them, and they said, "Why don't you have lunch with us?" I opened the door, and it's this big, huge table. This is a movie scene. It's a huge table, and it's cold cuts, bread, pickles, and vodka. And it was not uncommon, and actually more common, that they were sitting around, have a shot of vodka, a piece of bread, maybe some meat and some pickles, and that's what they did there
For lunch.
for lunch. Okay. So as I'm giving you the Genesis story, there is so much more Long Island, New York, fodder to this that could literally be its own podcast. So we did that for a little bit, but back to the point of what I came away with, I realized that obviously the people that I was treating in Brooklyn weren't wanting to get better, and the people in my own office, I just saw limited results. I could get them out of pain, but they'd come back next week and the week after that. And during my advertising efforts, I went down to the local gym, and I said, if I could, get more of these people in, these are people more minded, right? And so I started creating a relationship with who was the owner. And I don't know if you can imagine a gym owner in Long Island, New York, back then, a big, huge, I mean, one bicep is the size of both of my legs combined, right? I mean, this guy was huge.
What year are we talking?
So that is 2001. Yeah. Yeah. So a long, long time ago. And made friends with him. And he said, "Hey, I have the shoulder industry." Now, this guy, he's a story unto himself. What I didn't realize is the gym he owned, his previous partner was murdered in the back.
Oh, no.
And they looked alike, and it was mistaken identity. Turns out that it was his ex-wife put out a hit on him and killed his best man and best friend and partner and godfather to his son by accident. And he's been on Larry King. It's been on Snapped. She's been on Snapped, went away. So that in itself, again, whole other journey, whole other podcast. But him and I made a really great relationship, and it was such a unique relationship. You got this big, gruff guy owned a gym, and then you got this skinny, nerdy chiropractor, and we just formed a relationship. And part of that relationship was business, and I was working on his shoulder. And he said, "Man, my shoulders never felt better." Now, this is a guy that got redshirted to go to USC to play football. No one from Long Island ever got to one of these big schools to play
Wow.
football. But because of his tough upbringing in life, unfortunately, he ended up having to go to jail prior to owning this gym for 5 years. But he came out after those 5 years and started these gyms and thrived because he was a go-getter. And he should be on your next podcast. The guy's amazing what he's been able to accomplish for very, very humble beginnings. But anyway, he and I made a relationship, and I said, "Why don't you come into my office so I can really work on you?" Because I was like working on his shoulders. So he comes to the office. I remember a big, huge guy, a yellow Hummer, drives up. We have the smallest driveway. He barely could fit on it. He comes through the door, and at the time, all I could afford was the wicker IKEA furniture. He sits on it, and it literally explodes underneath him. Okay. So,
Oh, man.
And, so we were making a relationship, but it wasn't that tight yet. And I'm like, this guy is going to murder me. Like, he is, because he was embarrassed. I was embarrassed. Susan, who I mentioned earlier, is like literally 3 inches tall behind the counter that
Right.
me and Chris built. Like, we've actually built it with our own 2 hands, our front desk. And he started laughing. And like, luckily, it was like one of those moments like, please start laughing. So he starts laughing. So we became friends. And he said, "Listen, I don't have time to come to this office, but my shoulders never felt better. If I buy one of these," how he goes, "how much is one of these tables, these funky tables?" That's how he talks. He's like, "Well, how much is one of these funky tables right here?" And I'm like, "I don't know. You can get a reused one for like $800. He goes, "I'll buy one, put it in the office there, and then I'll give you a free gym membership. And when you come there, you work on me and you get a free gym membership." So that's how I got started.
That's how you did that.
Yes. Yes.
Because when I met you, it was here in Raleigh, and you were actually in a gym, and I had never been to a chiropractor before, and it was just intriguing to me because I'd never seen that in a gym either, and so you got there from having.
Absolutely.
That's
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah. And so when I was in there, now picture me, a much younger me with nice hair at the time. I sat in there, and other members started peeking around the corner because the drink closet that I was in was literally right by where all the meatheads were. It's like the biggest racks of weights were right by where the thing, and there's all those muscle milks and all the ABB drinks from the 90s and the 2000s in there. And I say, "What are you doing in there?" Well, of course, they're working out hard. So they had knee issues, shoulder issues, hip issues. So they start saying, "Can you work on me?" Well, we were covered by insurance, so it was easy. They had insurance, and I'd literally take down the insurance, work on them, bring it back to Susan in the house. So she's like, "Where are the patients?" I'm like, "They're at the gym," and she just started processing all the medical stuff from there. And we weren't even seeing patients out of there. I think in all the years I owned that house for practice, maybe I saw 150 patients. When I went into this gym, I was seeing 150 visits a week
Incredible.
within 30
Incredible.
days. Yeah.
So you found yourself in access to patients, and so now you're building a practice with people who are coming in and they're working out. They're either injured or they've had maybe poor form or they've had some other thing go wrong for them, and you're able to address them more directly because they are physically in the same space.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And how long were you in New York before you moved?
A few years, so about probably took 2, 3 years. So what ended up happening, how the business model evolved, for all you entrepreneurs out there, is Paul came to me and he said, "Listen, why don't you open up in my other location?" Because he had 2 gyms.
Okay.
And I was like, "Paul, I'm barely making it with the rent over here. Insurance, it takes forever to get paid, even though it looked like I was busy. Half the time we didn't even get paid because we didn't even have the right codes, the right modifiers, right? So we started doing that. And he said, "Well, all the people that are joining the gym," he started putting them in front of me to just talk about diet and nutrition, because I was a guy that tried out for D1 basketball at UMass Amherst. Like, I was a fit guy, and I liked diet and nutrition. And part of chiropractic training is we do a lot on the internal part of the body, right? So when in medicine, when they're focusing on,
Sure.
the pharmacopoeia, we're really focusing more on diet and restoration of health. And so I started working with people. And when I was working with them, I was like, "Look, you told me your goals are 15, 20 pounds. Your goals are XYZ. Well, there's these amazing trainers over there." And actually, one of them was a retired gym teacher that used to be my gym teacher growing up. I said, "Go to Coach Bruno. He looks scary, but he's actually an amazing coach and trainer. And you're going to get the best benefit. Even if you only worked out with him once or twice a week, it's better than you coming in here flailing around." And so what was happening is that as the people were joining, they're signing up more personal training. So Paul's again, "I'm making more money in personal training now. People are getting happier and healthier. Why would I charge you to have rent in my next location? I'll pay for the space." So he actually built out the space, put this nice window in it, we named it Chiropractic Fitness Centers, put the Chiropractic Fitness Centers logo on there. Actually, my cousin Joe did the logo, and at first he screwed it up and it said Chiropractico because one of his Spanish fabricators did it. So he put it up. I mean, it just gets better. So anyway,
That's absolutely
it's
fantastic.
amazing. It's amazing. So I put this office in there, and we're booming. And then I realized, wait a minute, this is a small space. Where am I going to put all the files? This is, we don't think about files today's day and age, but back then it was literally tab, put their name on it, put a sticker on it, put it away. You had to do everything by hand.
Yeah.
And I was into technology, so that's how I got into figuring out electronic medical records.
That is crazy town because for people who are not in the medical field, the space devoted to files used to be ginormous. And so, when I think about our offices that we encounter, there are full-size vault rooms that were dedicated to files. And if you were seeing that many patients on a daily basis in some building, the number of records you'd have had to store would have been outrageous.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we were I think I might have been one of the first people you have ever encountered that actually sent the first electronic medical record and claim. Because I was able to search it out and found it. Avicenna, I'll never forget. It's called Avicenna. I don't know if they're still around, but we started sending claims really, really early. And then other of my friends that were struggling like I was coming out of school said, "What are you doing?" It wasn't like they could see me on Facebook, right?
Oh, yeah.
No one could tell what you're doing. They just, every time I'm going to call them, like, "Mom, we're practicing in a gym." I was like, "What do you mean you're practicing in a gym?" And so I started opening up other locations and putting my friends and other chiropractors inside the gyms. And by the time I had met you, I think I had about 7 of them open. But I was still practicing, which is where I met you. I was practicing in downtown Raleigh because my wife, who's a newscaster, got the job in Raleigh. And I said, "Well, I'm now running all these different practices. I can get up and move."
crazy town. And so, you in Raleigh, did you have multiple practices in Raleigh?
Yeah. So then, as it turns out, there's a few gaps in the story. So a couple of things in the story is I did go get some training for billing and coding. I
Mhm.
went to a few seminars. And I'm a how guy, so I figured I like learned that by the back of my hand to where they started hiring me as a consultant. So I was practicing, opening up practices, and then being hired out to go across the country to teach other chiropractors how to actually bill and get paid properly, which is really rewarding for me because I saw
Yeah.
these people love their patients and not getting paid. So I did that for a while, which really made me, learn it. And then when I got here, the same thing happened in the gym industry. When I had the 7 locations, I realized that people weren't running personal training correctly. So I started taking over the personal training and having the gyms outsource that to my company. So here I had the chiropractic, which at times we had a physical therapy, nutrition, other modalities, plus the trainers working together. And it was a really, really great model to get people healthy, and of course, just to use synergies in the
Mhm.
business model.
Yeah, that's amazing, and when you start stacking those things together, you can actually help patients on a whole different level, right? Because many people, who are looking to get healthy or healthier will concentrate on one piece of whatever it is. So they will say, "I'm gonna try to nail nutrition down," but as they do that, they kind of fall off on the, "Let's actually work out the right way," or they're gun ho and great at the fitness piece, but they lack the nutrition piece, which is probably the usually the one that's the fault,
For
right?
sure.
But then there's mobility and there's flexibility and so all these things, and so by stacking them together, it gives you another opportunity to actually address the whole person instead of the parts that they were trying to look to address themselves.
Absolutely. And if I could go back to talk to the entrepreneurs out there and doctors that are just starting out, there were so many times that I just sat there and said, "What am I doing?" Like when I was in the mafia, the Russian mafia clinic, when I started the practice and no one was coming in, when I didn't know how to do the billing, when I was working so hard on people and then not seeing any collections come in and didn't have the heart to call the patient and say, yeah, that insurance you gave me is no longer good, or, very, very difficult to start something, but you got to keep going. There was a time when I opened up in the Westbury location that literally former wise guys and mafia worked. If anyone knows Westbury in Mineola, New York, there's a lot of wise guys in mafia that they were coming into the gym, exercising, literally wearing ankle bracelets. And then when they wanted to have a conversation with each other, they would say, Doc, I need your office because the feds can't bug a doctor's office. So I literally, at times, were literally kicked out of my own office, sitting like in the front of the gym, watching people and just sitting there waiting for them to finish using my office. Um, I know
It sounds so unreal. It's almost like a movie.
it. So one night, and I'm obviously cannot name names, but one night, and if I told you this name would not, you would, it was like, there's no way this is a person. But this person said, "Hey, so and so wants you to come out tonight. This is a Tuesday night.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I want you to come out." And they've been asking me for months, and I'm like, "No, I'm good. I got this going on. I got that going on. I don't want anything to do with it." So one night they're like, "No, you're coming." So we go to Sprats on the Water, which, and if you're a Long Island, New York person, I'm sure you know what this place is. And of course, they know everybody, drinking, whatnot. And like you do in New York when you're done for the night, you end up at the diner.
Mhm.
And I remember sitting there across from these 3 guys, and one of them, w I could just say was very close to John Gotti at some point. And I'm sitting there, and, they're telling me the most incredible stories, not great stories, but for them, incredible stories about all the things that they had done. And, I looked across at him at one point. I was in a very sobering moment. I just said, "Hey, if you just told me that, yeah, all these great things, but this one's in jail, that one's dead. Like, the story." I said, "If you had to do it all over again, would you have gone this path?" I like today, I feel it. He just looked at me and he goes, bangs his fist on the table and goes, "Yeah, I would." And I remember, the all the sugar packets shaking and the jelly shaking, and like it was just it was a time in my life that I just said, "Wow, there's people that make up all walks and seasons of life, and their
Yeah.
convictions are different. And, you know, again, just really interesting pathways to get to where I'm at. And so those were all the spices of life that, I had to get through to get here.
And you take little pieces of all of those moments, even the conversations that you have with you from place to place, right? And so, as you moved to Raleigh, you took the experiences that you had, but you also took the knowledge of the people that you met in New York, and that kind of rolled that into what you were doing here. I am fascinated by the electronic medical records piece, though, because that for me feels like a seed for some of what you are doing currently with Better because of all of the technology wrapped up into that.
Sure. So it's always been about, I wanted to spend more time being with people and less time doing the mundane things, right?
Sure.
So, and I think that's been your curiosity and your success in your life too. It's that you weren't just practicing, you were seeing how you could practice more efficiently and make a better patient experience. And I was obsessed with that also. I think that was the thing. So I've been very obsessed with the how,
Hmm.
and not the who. So there's a business issue here, right? The really good business people, like a CEO, doesn't worry about the how, he worries about the who's going to do it,
Yeah,
right?
right. That's right.
And so I always complain like, hey, my business has been really, really difficult. That's because I've been so stuck in the how. Because guess what? I love the how, right? I needed more who's, and I never stopped to do the who's. So if you think you're like I am, the founder right now and the CEO, I'm a phenomenal founder.
Hmm.
I'm a terrible CEO because I'm obsessed with the how,
It's
right?
very it's and it's a that's a great point that you bring out because it's very difficult. Most people who are founders, there's a cause that they're trying or a problem they're trying to solve. So they start to build the business model around this very specific problem. And to address the problem, they got to know all the hows. And so then there's processes that are put into place that they invented. And then you've got to find people that can take your invented process and scale it. And
Yes.
often those people don't quite do it the way you would have done it. And so you have to develop this ability to decide, is it scalable enough for somebody else to do and that's your who. And if the process is not, then do you still need to do the process if you're going to try to scale, right? So it's a big difference between looking at things that are done by single people and looking at things that must affect a multitude of people. And they're just not the same type of processes that you can put in place and have that happen.
Absolutely, absolutely. And getting back to what you were talking about is like, so now I'm in these gyms in Raleigh, because I became a student of the fitness industry as well, and I
Mhm.
ended up learning their technology as well, that I started becoming a consultant for gyms. So here I am going around the country talking to the gym owners, teaching them how they can make better processes, learn how to use their technology better, personal training, either take another training, and then they would say, well, what else do you do? And I said, well, I put chiropractic offices in gyms and take over training. They said, can you do that for us? And so in Raleigh, it just so happened I got hooked up with this first chain that got bought by another chain.
Mhm.
And they said, well, we want you to be in all of our locations because A, this is extra rent for us. Plus, we're going to have these doctors on staff now. And for me, it was great because I'd have, like your organization, the economies of scale now in one
Mhm.
location. So we went from 7 locations to like 30 locations in probably 18 to 20 months, very, very quickly. So we took our growing pains and scale. And what I was making huge mistakes back then is because a gym owner in Ohio said, you want to put an office in here? I said, yeah. I didn't, then Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So I was going across the country. But as you know, scaling multiple practices in little out pockets, just the flight alone out there took my profits off for 2 months, right?
Yeah.
You don't
Wow.
realize how it was.
And so you were in this modality and you were doing it for quite a while. When did you start to think about moving towards this the model that's in Better, where you've got the ability to coach and work with people from an online perspective?
It was forced on me because although it looks like I was having this tremendous success, and I grew very, very quickly. And here's another cautionary tale for those of you that are entrepreneurs or business owners. When I had about 7 to 8 locations started growing, I had no debt because I had been used to
Hmm.
doing the how, buying used equipment, installing the X-ray myself, buying the leaded sheetrock. Like, only thing we didn't do was the electrical. Being really, really frugal about building the business so that I never had any debt on the business until about 7 or 8 locations. someone tells me, hey, you want to scale, you need a business consultant. So I got somebody with the most amazing letters after their names, Ivy League education, worked for a very large consulting business firm. And they said, listen, you got to stop buying this equipment. You need to start leasing it. Here's all the tax benefits. Here's how you can scale. You can use other people's capital to grow. So I started doing that. Well, in 2008, 20 of the gyms that I ran went bankrupt overnight.
Yeah.
And this
That was a rough time.
including the place that where I met you. So I got a call at 6 p.m. on a Friday. Dr. Hall calls me and says, Doc, I can't get into the office. And I said, why? She says, there's chains on the doors of the gym. And I said, what? And then another call, and I started getting calls from other doctors. And so that was it overnight. So now and it wasn't just that was, I shouldn't say that was it. At that point now I have $2 million of liability over my head. So I went to ashes, financially went to absolute ashes. I had been already doing the diet and nutrition stuff and focusing on gut health before that. And believe me, everyone was like, "You such a quack." I'm like, "I'm already a quack, chiropractor." Like, you can't keep piling on the insults at this point,
Right.
because I was focusing on gut health and digestive enzymes and probiotics way before it was a thing. And we were getting people healthy with this protocol that I had come away with, not come up with, come away with.
Oh, it was.
And so the protocol is very simple. It's 3 weeks of using foods that reduce inflammation in the body, and then another week or two of reintroduction to see what foods work best for them.
Okay.
And the way I came up with this list was actually a member downtown. She worked for the state health plan, and you may have even bumped into her back then, but she would come in the morning, take a spin class. At lunchtime, would come in and do something like with a trainer, and then come back at night again and take another type of class or workout. I mean, she was doing 3 days. Her goal was to lose like 57 pounds. So she's doing this for 3 or 4 months. She barely loses a pound. So what will we train to do as doctors at this point? Oh, well, it's got to be her thyroid. It's got to be this. It's got to be that, right? We just focus on all the things that's wrong with her, right? Because obviously, if she's doing all this exercise and it's not working, obviously there's something wrong within her body, because that's what we've all been told. So she goes off into this pathway. I'm sure it was thousands and thousands of dollars of different specialists. And then, of course, when they can't find anything, what do they say? You're crazy. This is all in your head, right? This is a behavioral issue. So they start gaslighting her even further now and thinking it's not, your thyroid. Or I think one person said it's probably thyroid, so let's put you on this medication, right? So they start
she's
sampling
medication.
Yeah, start putting medications. And so I said, I'll call her Sally. Sally, let me just focus on your nutrition. So I gave her the standard protocol of nutrition, followed her calories, did her rested metabolic rate. She was eating whole wheat turkey, banana, all the things that were good. Still nothing. So then I start thinking maybe it is in her head. And I said, I read a book on elimination reintroduction and digestive enzymes. Let's just see what we could do here. So I just started taking away certain foods for her. And I took away broccoli. I took away cauliflower. I took away salmon. I took away turkey. And I took away pork. I took away bananas because that's what and then as soon as I did that, just had her have other lean proteins, fruits and vegetables. She started losing weight daily. And I was like, what's going on here? So the more I looked into those foods, I realized the foods I was giving her high in fiber, low glycemic.
Mm-hmm.
She was not allowed to eat out anymore either. I was just seeing to control the experiment. And she ends up losing 35 pounds very, very quickly. And that's when I realized this isn't an overweight problem we have in the society. This is an overinflamed issue that we have in society. And since I started practice in 2000 to now, it's only gotten harder. Why? The rainwater is no longer safe for human consumption. A baby being born today is exposed to over 256 chemicals before they take their first breath. There's microplastics. European Union won't take half of our food because of all the garbage we allow in it. We allow, I think in Canada, they banned 400 chemicals in clothes. And in the European Union, it's over 1,000. We only ban 40. Basically, there's 11,000 chemical disruptors attacking our endocrine system every single day. And this poor woman was working out as hard as she can, watching what she was eating, doing everything they told her to do, ran through the medical mill, added medications on top of it, only to toxify her even further, getting her further and further from the truth. And so what I took away from all this is there's no one size fits all. go back to basics, and reintroduce the person to themselves. Say,
Yeah.
hey, doc, your body's done this. This is a woman who also had a baby, prior to that. She was able to build a whole human in 9 months, but she can't regulate her weight, her sleep, her mood, and her anxiety. It's insane.
That is unbelievable. So the thinking about the clothing though, that's something I've never thought about. Tell me a little bit about like what is a person to do though? Because what's available to you is what's available to you from a clothing perspective. And if what's available is not the same as European or even Canadian clothing, what are people being exposed to and how do they think about that?
Yeah, so I don't like to use fear and
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, don't doom and gloom. But when I first met you, I used to wear a blazer and a shirt to practice every day. I used to have to iron that shirt. I
Hmm.
don't have to iron it very much anymore, right?
Yeah, that's true.
What are they putting in it that allows it to just stay so velvetly smooth? Basically, Teflon, the chemical version of Teflon, is essentially what is on most of our clothes. That's what's in the fabric softeners. That's what's in the detergents that they're using. And so, in addition to that, I say, well, maybe the clothing, you can definitely get rid of this fabric softeners. That's easy. You can also get a better detergent. You might not be able to change all the clothing that's out there, right? Because it's being manufactured. You could probably look for all cotton and do some of those things. But let's just pretend that's the one vice. The one vice is I'm going to forget clothing because that's too much to
Too
tackle.
much. Okay.
But what you can tackle is toothpaste to toilet paper. Okay.
Okay.
So from the toothpaste you're brushing with, to the mouthwash you're using, and even to the toilet paper you're using. Most of the toilet paper we're using today, if it's not bamboo or something else, is full of forever chemicals at the most sensitive part of your body. Every day, couple times a day, if you're lucky. For some people, that's a lucky. But you are exposing, and it's happening to our kids. Why are these kids so precocious in their growth, right?
Yeah.
What does a 9-year-old girl look like now that even just in 2000? It's different. And so I think that not to alarm people, but to make them aware that there's simple things that you cannot contribute to the chemical deluge that is currently happening. Number one, no more plastic cutting boards. As convenient as they are, no thank you.
Yeah.
Your Starbucks coffee, bring your cup in and at least get them to fill your cup. Because as soon as you take a Starbucks coffee,
It's
that
got the
they
wax
say
and the
paper cup, and there's no paper in there. You have you ever taken a paper bag and put water in it?
doesn't work
It
so well.
doesn't work so good, right?
Yeah.
The plastic lid that you're drinking through. Most of us are consuming a credit card amount of plastic every single week. Again, what I want you to do is let's allow the body to use, like the liver that has a lot of processes to get rid of these toxins and chemicals. Eat that good healthy food, wash it the best way you can. If you can get organic, get organic. Focus on what's going into your body from cheek to cheek, and that should give you enough, ways to combat all these things without freaking yourself out and worry about every little thing on the planet.
That's important because, the more I consume a lot of podcasts and news articles, and I've recently read a lot of things about forever chemicals and the Teflon and how uh, there was a long trail of figuring out that that chemical never really dissipated. And to your point, it's kind of in everything and everywhere. And one of the articles was so interesting because it started looking at blood samples of the general population, and everybody's carrying around micro doses of Teflon. And so they had to start digging into blood samples from decades ago. And it turns out that because people thought, well, maybe it's in the environment and it's been in the environment and we just didn't know it was there now that we never looked for it. And there's a distinct cutoff between the invention of nonstick and those chemicals being actually in blood supply. So it turns out that when you donate blood, there's they keep some samples of that. They can test it for things over time. And so there's decades worth of donated blood that has been pulled for sample. And so going back to the pre-Teflon days, there was no Teflon chemical in blood samples. And so it was just really interesting that you bring that up because it's such a useful chemical for how we live our lives, but it is one of those things that just stays around forever.
Absolutely. And they I think it was LabCorp or Quest Diagnostic Fit, which when it was, they tested urine samples of adults and children. I think it was something like 78% of them had glycophosphate forever chemical that's sprayed on our food and our crops in it. So just take those two chemicals alone, right?
Yeah.
What they known endocrine disruptors, known issues, and look at where we are as a society health wise. Within the next 4 years, 50% of Americans will be obese in the obese category. I think it's 40% or more right now have one or more chronic condition. 28% of our children have a chronic condition. And so where once I was the quack chiropractor, and I hate to say this, that my only vindication is we've been going the medical route for the last 50 years, right? When it changed, and there's this distinct change in the pathway of how we treated people, and it goes back to 1820s when Rockefeller got involved and decided that John Hopkins was going to be the only way to teach, and the only way to teach was treat with medicine, because the medication's base was what? Oil and
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But let's not get too upset at that. And then bring it forward. It's like, well, if less than 8% of Americans are metabolically healthy, and we spend $12,000 to $13,000 a year on healthcare versus every other country, we failed, right? I mean, if this was a business, you failed.
Yeah.
And so there's no more of, well, I don't know if that's scientifically backed. It's like, well, you've been listening to scientifically backed stuff for a long time from the makers of whom, and how's it going? Just ask, how is it going? If you asked a 20-year-old these days, how many of your friends are anxious and depressed? They would say it'd be easier to tell you someone who isn't. Why is that? Well, the chemicals are affecting your brain and your gut connection. 90% of the body's serotonin is made in the gut. These kids couldn't find happiness on a map physiologically, chemically, with the GPS coordinator. And what do we do when they're feeling anxious and depressed? We gaslight them and say, you're a snowflake. You've been given everything. You're spoiled rotten. There's something wrong with you. I can't believe this. Just like we gaslight Americans who are overweight. The biggest prejudice is not the color of our skin. It's when you walk through Target and you see somebody that is carrying 25, 50, 100 pounds overweight, the first thing you go to default is that lazy, fat, you know what. Right?
Yeah.
And it's not the case. They are inflamed and they're stressed. And the lower your socioeconomic standpoint in life is, you add in financial stress to the automatic chemical stress. Plus, if you're in a lower socioeconomic, you're probably more exposed to these chemicals as well. And then this person's stuck in a vicious cycle where we're gaslighting the people that are overweight and saying you're lazy and unmotivated. We're gaslighting the younger generation saying, you don't care about everybody else. You're just a spoiled brat. And how's it getting us there? So what better, and what came from those ashes when I realized as an entrepreneur, you weren't doomed by God because these gyms closed overnight. You built your business on top of somebody else's business. That was a mistake. Okay. And once
Yeah.
I accepted that and stopped giving power to the universe and took it back, I then realized, wait a minute, what came out of this? What did I come away with? I came away with a protocol that I've been able to test on thousands of people and able to now deploy it virtually, because I don't need brick and mortar, sheetrock, and a gym and an office and count on all these things. I could just meet people where they were at, get them on weekly calls. I added in coaching for support, and I'm able to take people through this protocol so they could become aware that stop buying all the things that are wrong with you,
Yeah.
right? Everything's great. You've built a baby. I can't even put IKEA furniture together in 9 months. And you were able to build a baby? You're amazing, lady. Like, you got this. All we need to do is put one foot in front of the other. And once you start feeding the body properly and being aware of, and just reduce as much chemicals as you can, right? You can't get rid of all of them, but reduce the diet sodas and the artificial sweeteners and the dyes and all that other garbage. If, like Jack LaLanne said, if man made it, don't eat it. Just get rid of that type of stuff. Watch how quickly your body responds within 24 hours. And so it doesn't have to be one of our brand guidelines is never use the word journey.
Oh,
This isn't a journey,
okay.
because a journey is what? A long time. How quickly does your body heal? Well, if you cut the inside of your mouth, how fast does it go to work? Instantly.
Yeah.
Right? The same thing for your process. Sometimes someone says, here's your diagnosis, right? I'm buying your diagnosis of type 2 diabetes. What is a chronic condition? What's the definition of a chronic condition? A symptom or a result of something that lasts for 3 or more months. Okay. So are you telling me that once I have that symptom and it goes past 3 months, I have it forever? It's like I have to write it on myself like the scarlet letter and say, I have type 2 diabetes. That's what people tell me. I'm a type 2 diabetic. And I said, well, give your body a couple of weeks of this other way, and you'll see that your blood sugar levels, literally within 24 to 48 hours of going through this protocol, their blood sugar levels already come down. We have a Dr. Davida Kruger from Henry Ford Hospital, who, when she sends people to us, to her type 1 insulin dependent folks, she titrates down their medication 5 to 10% before they even start, because she's now watched so many people how quickly the body responds. So that seems like a miracle. Yeah, it is. Your body's a miracle. Right?
Wow. That's incredible. That's incredible. And so, when people now are referred to you, they find you, you start working with them. What is the first thing you do? Is it that you how do you counsel them and set their expectations so that they understand the importance of going through the process, we won't say journey, and getting them to commit to it, because often people have tried multiple things and it's very difficult to get them to commit or recommit to something because of that.
Yeah, they already bought everything that was wrong with them 10 times over, right?
Yeah.
So they bought the Weight Watchers. What is Weight Watchers? They want you to be a member for life. They want you to watch your weight for life. And what they're saying is they want you to watch your calories, which eventually they said, ooh, people don't like that word anymore. We'll call it points now. And they did a great job of building community. So I'm not against Weight Watchers. They did a great job of bringing awareness to certain things, but they never really understood what the root cause was. They misinterpreted the root cause as people being lazy and unmotivated and not understanding that, like, eating cheeseburgers and pizza all the time are bad for you. Everybody knows that. A toddler knows that, right? Well, what they didn't realize is that since the time they started Weight Watchers, let's look at the same level of exposure to chemicals, like we just did with Teflon. Weight Watchers came out as a result of people going, I'm not losing weight no matter what I do. I'm having these terrible cravings despite my willpower and motivation. And now, unfortunately, Weight Watchers has gone to the dark side, and they said, we give up. Oprah left. She gave up on you. She said, I'm going to go take the medication because I'm done, right? It didn't work for her. So my point is that when someone is coming through this program, you're right, they're cynical and skeptical. So I meet them there. I'm like, look, you should be cynical and skeptical because you bought everything that's wrong with you, and they were happy to sell it to you. And they're very happy to sell it to you. It's why our healthcare is so expensive, because we found out that if we can throw a label diagnosis on it, we can put a medication or a modality to it. And that's why we spend the most on healthcare, but get nothing from it, because it's all going to places that don't really actually get to the root cause. And so when I work with somebody, I said, listen, I get that you have a limiting belief right now, right? Your limiting belief is that you can't do it. But yet you're here, because that's the human spirit, right? Really, really down into core. There was some impetus that happened. They said, they looked in the mirror, their clothes didn't fit. There was something that said disgust. They got some level of disgust. So when you get a level of disgust, now you're like, maybe I got to do something, right? So then they come to us and I said, just give me 3 days. I don't want a journey. I don't want to make this a big elaborate thing like everyone else. Everyone else is telling you it's up in your head. It's not up in your head, right? The only thing that's up in your head is all the crap that you bought bad about yourself. But your body's amazing. Your gut microbiome, they don't know about that. They know about the human cells, but they don't know about the gut bacteria. There's more gut bacteria in your gut than stars in the Milky Way. I mean, picture that. Picture going down to the beach, looking up at the sky, or in Montana, looking at all these beautiful stars, and just seeing how vast and amazing it is, and realizing that you have more gut bacteria than stars in the Milky Way. So I'm teaching them, like, hey, we can put those to work for you, because that's what we're designed to do. And if you want to say, if it's science-based, who's the father of modern medicine? Hippocrates. What was one of his famous quotes? Look well to the gut for the root of all disease. And then he also said, let food be thy medicine. So that's why I didn't come up with better. I came away with it.
I see. Yeah. And so it's amazing that you look at it and you go, give me 3 days, because there's zero other things that people can encounter that they have a give me 3 days when it comes to bettering your health, your wellness, or your fitness. Like, there's just nothing that you get 3 days. And so at the end of that 3 day period, I'm assuming most people are seeing some sort of positive change that then gets them to think about this more holistically and think about it over some period of time beyond that 3-day period.
Correct. It's if you've heard of neurolinguistic programming or NLP, right? The Tony Robbins of the world. This is the best form of NLP because it's happening physiologically without you having to do anything other than feed it. And what happens is we give them a scale, and a lot of people sometimes have an aversion to the scale, right? Because they're tired of weighing themselves. That I said, listen, you're not seeing if you're having weight loss, you're seeing if you're having inflammation reduction, right? Because fat is a good thing. Fat is an amazing energy, and you have a lot of people have a lot of potential energy sitting around their midsection. My job is to help the body convert it quickly back into energy. And the way you do that is to reduce the metabolic inflammation. Like when you think about the cells in your body, you think of them as part of your body. They're actually a community. Your body's just a community because there's some of those cells dying off, and then of course the stem cells are replenishing them. But this is a community of cells, and that community, just like you, are surrounded in chemicals. And so very quickly, by changing the construct of drinking the water, having the fruits and vegetables, when you have like a piece of fruit, I have so many type 2 diabetics are so nervous to have a piece of fruit, right? Doctor
Literally
said,
afraid to have a piece of fruit.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I give them the apple, and I said, well, see, I always have to tell them, you still have to check with the doctor, right? That's cover my own butt disclaimer. I said, but you could try it and see how it goes. So they have the apple, and then they have another fruit for a snack later, apple, strawberries, blueberries, something like that. And then the next day the scale goes down. And I said, and a lot of them have CGM devices, right? The continuous glucose monitors. And they'll see their blood sugar levels start leveling out quickly. And then, that's an interesting marker. I said, well, go again the next day. Well, why is that? Because if you don't have fiber in fruit, that non-soluble fiber, but it means your body doesn't break it down, it goes into your large intestines and it sits there. That's what's a prebiotic. Okay, that's what the bacteria live off of. They love fermented stuff like kimchi and sauerkraut and all these great fiber. That's why a high fiber diet or a higher fiber diet is so important to the human, because it's important to the natural bacteria. So where we can talk about the 10, 20, 30 trillion human cells, you have 300, 400 trillion natural bacteria. And so when you start focusing on how you're feeding them and feeding yourself, you get out of the punishment mentality and get into the nourishment mentality. And then the body starts to say, hey, as I reduce inflammation, and we know if you reduce inflammation, you're going to reduce insulin resistance because your body's in a better state. The body, while you're sleeping, starts to convert fat to energy. And so I tell most people, I'm like, you know how you thought you had to come into my gym back in the day, put you on the treadmill, a guy with a fanny pack and chalk, and throw you out in the parking lot and do what Sally used to do 3 times a day and drink chalky shakes and all this crap? No. I want you to relax. I want you to picture yourself in an easy chair for the next couple of weeks and just let your body do what it's designed to do, remove the interference, and watch the most incredible metabolic process. 1,000 Elon Musk, 4 million ChatGPTs will never be smarter than the mechanism that's happening within your body. You just have to get out of its way. And I've been able to do this now by just starting with 3 good days. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they see the weight go down. Now, truthfully, their skepticism doesn't fade right away.
Right.
A lot of times they go, oh, doc, that's just water weight. And I said, okay, let's talk about that a second. How many ounces of water did you drink? Oh, about 70 ounces of water, because we really make sure water is an important part of it. And I said, well, how much do you think 70 ounces of water weighs? I don't know, about 5, 6 pounds. So you added 5 or 6 pounds, which because you maybe weren't drinking that much water, maybe 2, 3, but yet the scale still went down over the next 3 days. How do you think that happened? Keep going. But what's different about this for the first 3 days versus dieting, because I could put you on the cabbage soup diet, you're going to see the scale go down, right?
Right.
I could do keto, I could do a million different things. But what's different about this is because I'm focusing on fueling the gut bacteria, the cravings start going away. The sleep gets better. The energy gets better. You're removing the interference around the cell. So rather than going upstream like every other program you've ever tried because it's punishment, you're actually starting to work with the body. So the only climbing of the hill during this process is the first weekend. And that hill to climb on the first weekend is getting to the grocery store, coming up with some meal prep, making some mason jar salads, getting a bag of apples and oranges, and now you're at the top of the hill, and all you got to do is eat the stuff. And if you eat the stuff, you come right back down that hill. So 99% of the people that start day one complete the program. And it doesn't mean they complete it in the next 30 days. So of the people that start Monday, something happens. I got this thing at work. My kid got sick. Something can come into the way. But what's different about our protocol is to say, all right, start again next week then. Start again the next week. So we just make sure you get up to that first 3 days. After that first 3 days, 99% of people finish the protocol. They do the level 1 part and the reintroduction. And when they're done, they go, that's interesting. Quinoa everyone's been trying to get me to eat doesn't work so well with me. That broccoli, that cauliflower, that salmon, there's some foods in there that they discover that don't work well with them. And then I get the other biohackers that raise their hands and say, well, doc, there's a test for that. Well, I used to do the tests, the poop test, the saliva test, the expensive test. And what I came away with is that those will give you a book of all the things you shouldn't eat. And that may be snapshot of time. But with this Milky Way of microbiome, with this Milky Way of your body, it's constantly changing and adapting. So that can actually make you even crazier.
What a fantastic point. So you're battling the inflammation, you're resetting things. And so the types of foods that you may respond to in a moment in time may not be the same types of foods that you respond to over time.
Agree. How do we know that? There are more kids now with gluten allergies, peanut allergies. Everyone's got an allergy to something. Did we just suddenly genetically morph into something? And for those that will say to me, well, doc, it's my genes. No, it's not. Your genes do not have a brain like you think they do. And if you really go back to study it, first of all, the first thing is do you remember who came up with the double helix? Watson and Cricket, right? Those are the people.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was in a book somewhere,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Right. Well, it was actually a woman. And they took all the credit. But when you go look at the DNA, there's epigenetics, right? It's how the genes are actually express themselves and how those genes are exposed to the environment. They're constantly turning on and off and doing their thing, but it's more environment and lifestyle than anything else. And that is proven. So once you feel like you're stuck with your genes, well, there's that expression. If you think you can, you're right. If you think you can't, you're right. Well, I need to first get people back to the source. So after the first 3 days are going, that's when we start putting in the education of all these things. So they say, you know what? I'm getting back to the user manual of myself. And by the time 30 days is up, I create raving fans that go out and bring other community members in, usually their family, friends, and others, to teach them. My coaches that I give you, they don't have 16-pack abs Instagram gurus. They're just like the rest of us. All they are is just saying, hey, I just did it. This is how I did it. Let me help you through it. I don't need to go dial in every macro or micro you eat. I don't need you to have you'll drive yourself crazy if you go on Instagram. Someone's like, listen, here's how you do it. You want to be like me? Get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, journal for an hour in Sanskrit, you create a tech startup by 9 a.m., balance on your head, have water, but don't have too much water, right? It's like insane. Oh, and then as soon as you're done, there's an ad that's like, you know how you get the best sleep? We have an alarm clock that has sustainably sourced unicorn dreams in it, and you click the button.
Oh my gosh. It's only hilarious because it's very true. And I have to say, you delivered that fantastically. And I know you do some stand-up, but that was fantastic.
Thank you.
Because it's true. It's very true. And you're right. Like you get so many pieces of advice and you don't know exactly what to do with these pieces, and people latch on to one thing or another. And sometimes the things you latch on to are actually in opposition. And then you're trying to figure out, well, what do I do? Because this one person that I really like told me to do this, but this other person that I also really like said, do this instead. And they're completely opposite, and you don't know how to resolve it.
Yeah, you know the people, like most people think me as I'm always smiling. I'm like, kind of a happy guy. Maybe the people that work in my organization might think I'm intense. I'm intense because I love the user, and I know that. I think the pressure I put on myself and the team is that I know the person that's coming to us is so cynical and skeptical, and I know that like if somehow they don't log into the app and it breaks for them, they're like, I knew it. God doesn't want me to be like. They're just so quick. They're like spooking horses. Right?
Yeah.
And I'm so nervous that we'll spook them before they just get those 3 good days. So I'm just so intense about the user experience, which has really helped us because we went from being only paid for out of pocket direct to consumer to now we have big health plans and employer groups covering the program because we get so many people off these expensive medications. That's a value proposition for them to say, hey, go try the BETR Health. And we only would have got there by me taking away from failure, right? I've watched a lot of people go through this. So we give them the concept that their body can heal themselves, but then we give them the community, the tools, and the resource, and just the right dose to allow them to get across the finish line. Now, we're not perfect. That's why the company's called BETR, not perfect. But we are always striving to do that. So one of the biggest things I try to get across to people when they first come is like, listen, we're not IBM and Apple. I
Mhm.
don't, this isn't a VC backed company. I back this all myself. So if you don't love the technology all the time, realize that we're doing it on the fly. I don't have 2 years to sit in a room and come up with,
Yeah.
and you alluded to before, now we're ahead of the game using AI. Why are we ahead of the game using AI? Because it's getting my butt kicked building my app. I was plowing so much money into this app, and I think it was getting worse every day because those technologies are just so antiquated and no one wants another app. I mean, this could be a punchline. How many apps does it take to somebody get healthy? Right? It's insane.
They're everywhere.
They're everywhere. Ours is all text
Everywhere.
based now and web based, so you don't have to download an app or anything. But back to the guru thing, people thinking he's happy, funny. I digressed about my workers, my team members. But when it comes to me following Instagram, TikTok, I'm usually screaming and yelling like, please shut up. No, please stop. And I know that the gurus out there are trying to do a good job, right? They're out there. But just because something worked for them, they write a book about it. There's a million books written on diet and nutrition. They're not all wrong and they're not all right. They're just not right for you most of the times. And so what bothers me is that someone gets somebody geeked up because they're on Instagram, like, do this, but there's no pathway, community, resources, or tools to help them implement it. And I never wanted to have my name on something that I couldn't go out and see somebody at the grocery store and feel good about my product. And that's what was happening back in Long Island when I was first failing in the practice. Is it's a small place. It's a big place, but they're small communities. I would see someone who joined the gym, gung ho. We were friends for like the first 4 weeks. She was working out with the trainer, and then she tailed off. And next thing you know, I'm seeing her out and she's ducking me and I'm ducking her because both
Mm.
of us feel like we failed each other. That's not who I am, and that's not who I wanted to be. So it wasn't until I went to the ashes of my business to come away with what is now a gift because I can help so many people with just knowing that, hey, my only job is to get out of their way. And they have the user manual already built inside them. And it's a much more freeing position to be in. And it's a much more freeing position for them to be in because I don't want them to be following me. I want them to be following them.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. Why I didn't ever write a book on this is because the only page it would say the ultimate guide to hacking your health in 3 days or less. That would be the cover. And you'd open it and there'd be a mirror in there. And that would be the book. Like,
Incredible. What's next for you then?
I just feel like I was chosen to keep doing this. And so of course we want to grow. So we are in the stage right now. We're going to raise a little bit of capital because I feel like I need some more who, right? I'm in the how too much. I've learned how to program AI. I've learned how to program Python. I've taught myself these things because honestly, as you know, as an entrepreneur, when you try to sometimes go get the who, they can take you down a road. They tell you things because you don't know enough about it to know. I know enough now. No, you're not fooling me. And I care enough about my end user to make sure I vet it out. But we're going to raise some capital and take it to the next level. Our biggest pitch to employer groups now, we recently won a pitch competition called the EHIR Academy, which is a group of about 60 Fortune 500 companies, employer groups. And I know you guys have a lot of employees that are getting killed with the benefits. It's going up every year. It's eating to everybody's paycheck. It's eating to everybody's bottom line. So we wanted to pitch to employer groups because, quite frankly, they just like that ours is simple. They've been sold every wellness tool out there, every program out there, every medication out there, like the GLP-1s costing $1,000 a month for these folks. We come in and say, oh, you have 5,000 employees? Here's 20 programs for them to go through. Give it to your staff. Let them test drive it. See what they think and come back to us. And what do you think happens? Because we're so good at it, 19 out of 20 come through becoming raving fans. The one that maybe didn't says, you know what, I'll come back to this later. I have some other stuff to deal with. It can be used for everything from diabetes to hypertension, anxiety, general weight management, all the way up to people that are trying to get better performance in the gym, right? Because this is about just resetting the body systems and getting the most out of it. And then when they come with us, we say, only pay us for the people that enroll in the program, get 5, 7, 10% weight loss, come off their medication. So we get paid purely for outcomes. And those outcomes will give an ROI to the company, usually 3-to-1. So it's been very, very, our timing is right. I'm telling you, I was complaining for the last 5 years, watching all of our competitors literally raise $100 million or more and getting upset saying, how come we're not there? How come we're not there? One of your things on your podcast said, what awards have you gotten? Right? I'm like, none. I never get any awards. I should be the award for the least awarded person because we just been focusing on our craft, that we don't go to the big shows. We're not out there as keynote speakers. But guess what? All of it's come back because now the tipping point has happened. The convergence has happened in healthcare or in any health insurance. There's a pool of people, right? There's the drivers that are safe drivers, and then there's the Dr. Vades of the world. But, and that's how they pool it. Well, normally in health insurance, it was healthy people and unhealthy people. And it used to be 75% healthy, 25% unhealthy. Well, there's been a convergence, and it's happened in the last 4 years where it's going the opposite direction. So it's no longer sustainable. So you can no longer get by just because you're at the trade show and you had the fancier booth and to sell a product to an employee group, because employee group, it eventually goes to the CFO, right? And CFO goes, I don't have a personality. I didn't go out to dinner with that sales guy. This is either going to create revenue and so
It makes math sense or it doesn't.
Exactly. And so we are in the sweet spot right now of really being able to deliver high-powered results, better outcomes for these employer groups. And of course, the end users, end up loving it.
Well, if I'm listening to this and I want to find you, what do I do?
BETR is spelled BETR. Jake Paul came out with BETR after us, even though I've trademarked it. So do not go to the betting site because they spelled it the same way, BETR, but we're BETRhealth.com.
Okay.
And the way we do it is you click on there, you go through what's called a virtual consultation. So you'll see a video of me. I'll ask you some questions about your lifestyle. We'll let you pick the preferences of your food. If you like to cook, we have the recipes. If you don't like to cook, I have a nationwide meal delivery service. Literally will feed you. And that alone is a really good byproduct of all of this, is that what I came away with was that my members wanted to do this, but don't always have the time to cook. And so for my own family, I was researching all of these meal delivery companies and realizing that, well, if you live the lifestyle of the rich and famous, yeah, you can afford these meals, but everybody else, you're out of luck. Or if you could afford them, not to name names, but it rhymes with penny smegs, they fill it with sodium and garbage, right? And so if you're on the lower financial spectrum that you could afford. So I was like, how do I democratize this? I have people from Medicaid, Medi-Cal. I got people from Medicare Advantage, commercial, you name it. I mean, I got people that work for high-powered jobs and athletes to people that are worried about next paycheck. And so when I was researching how to get meal delivery, I was like, just like I'm always in the how. I'm like, how is it so expensive? Well, it's so expensive because if you advertise one of these meal delivery companies, you have to pay client acquisition costs. Client acquisition costs in social media are anywhere between $180 to $250, sometimes $300 for these meal companies. Well, my members are coming to me through partnerships with health clubs, partnerships with employer groups, partnerships with health plans like Blue Shield of California, Florida Blue. So when they send people to me, I don't have client acquisition costs. I'm just there to perform a service. So I said, okay, well, how do I then get them the meals delivered? Because the next biggest cost in meal delivery is the shipping. Yeah. So then I looked at shipping costs. Well, what is the biggest thing of shipping costs? I thought it was weight. It's not weight. It's the volume of the box. Yep. So I said, okay, how do I maximize this? Oh, I'll maximize the amount of trays I can put in one box. And I also realized that, well, if I send you a meal, well, again, penny smegs, it comes with one piece of chicken, broccoli that looks like it's been dead for 30 years, rice and now did I solve for anything? I'm giving it to Mrs. Jones, but her family still needs to eat healthy. So did I solve any cooking needs for her? No, all I did was give her a low-calorie salt lick. Basically, she's a deer. So instead I said, if I were to make, in my family, it's not hard to make a salad. You know what's hard? Making the burgers taste good. The chicken breast tastes good. The fish that I wanted to cook. So instead, I give you a tray of mahi-mahi. I give you a tray of bison burgers, a tray of chicken, a tray of chili, all of the things that you can stack. And I can put 8 trays, 12 trays, or 16 trays in a box and make it come out to less than $5 per serving. Of course, it depends if you pick the marinated steak or whatever, you can charge you more, and make it so that the family could dole it out family style. Or in the gyms, I got guys like you. You'll eat 2 pieces of chicken breast, maybe even
Yeah.
3 on a day that you're heavy lifting. So I made it so that it comes out to like $6 per serving. And here's the last part. Most of the meal delivery companies freeze it first. It doesn't taste good if you freeze food and then it gets unfrosted and sent to you. I want to do it fresh. So the one thing for us is you have to order by Saturday night. The chef gets all the orders on Sunday, prepares everything, cooks it on, does all the prepping on Monday, and then on Tuesday, Wednesday, cooks it, packs it in ice, and shows up fresh on Friday. So all you have to do is heat and serve. And if you're a Medicare recipient and you're living alone, you can get 1 box, and whatever you don't eat over the next 7 days, you freeze. So you can actually have food for a couple of weeks, because I'm not going to put somebody on some random subscription, right? So everything we've done has been deliberately around an incredible user experience, and we get paid in spades by that because we get outcomes. And then if you were to, go to my last 100 people that went through the program, and I'd say, how many people have you told about the program? They'd say, I tell everybody. And they'd say, actually, I think I signed up for some multi-level marketing thing because I won't shut up about it. That's our big Achilles heel. People think we're like a pyramid scheme because so many people won't shut up about it. But yeah, so go to betterhealth.com, go through that virtual consultation. We figured it all out. We know how to help you get through that first 3 days. If you're a self-pay user and you pay for the program, and it's only $149 right now to start the program, comes with 2 coaching calls. If you get on it and you even go through the full 30 days in the beginning and say, this wasn't for me, I refund you on the spot, no questions asked. I've done this for 10 years. We do that. That's why we still have 4.9 stars on Google and Facebook, is because I am that guy that I want to see you in the grocery store and have you be happy and excited. And if it wasn't for you, I'd rather point you in the right direction and say, hey, so I don't add this insult of the time that you've just spent on us and the money you spent on us, take this money and go do something else. You know what happens 99.9% of the time when I refund them? 3 months later, they say, I'm ready now. Now's the time.
They're back.
They're back.
This has been fantastic. So, we had a little bit of conversation as we were catching up, and you let me peek under the hood a little bit. And so I had some thoughts around Better in general and how this all came together. But it's just fantastic hearing you kind of just take the hood off and let us look at it. And so I'm sure there are people listening who are they're going to go to the right place. They're going to go to betterhealth.com, BETR Health.com, and they're going to find you. And there are going to be people who are going to want to hear more. So we're going to plan on having you back, and we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff, because there's other things that we did not talk about that I find extremely interesting. And I think people just outside of the business world, right? Because as an example, I do ask people, hey, do you have any special talents, like stuff that you wouldn't expect? And I literally laughed and was floored by the fact that you said, I can move odd objects like surface of heavy things with grace and like by yourself. And I just think that's amazing. So we got to talk about it, because that's not one of those things you just know. You find that out doing it. And so I got to know.
Kids, every time my kids would see me, like my wife was like, move this, whatever. I could take a whole couch that you was like, there's no way. And for whatever reason, I could figure out my big ass hand and my long wingspan. I could just find just how to balance it just enough, like Cirque du Soleil, get it straight through the door. And if anyone helps me, it's worse. I'm like, do not. That's literally my superpower. Maybe packing a trunk. I'm pretty good at packing a trunk as well. But that my superpower is, you need some furniture moved around here? I'm your guy.
Man, I'm going to have plenty of furniture to move. I'm calling you and I'm putting you on the list. You're going to have to come help me. But man, thank you so much for sitting down and having a conversation with me today. This has been phenomenal. I've been entertained. I've laughed a lot, but I've learned even more. And I think that's a phenomenal thing.
Yeah. And first of all, thanks for your friendship. I know we haven't been able to, connect, but I've always, all the time, right, we get busy. But when I first met you and watching you as a doctor, right? Because I was living in Briar Creek. So you were coming to me as a chiropractor. I brought my family to you for our eye care stuff, and just watching your bedside manner, watching how you worked with the staff. It's no wonder you're where you're at today with that organization. And it's that they have such a gift of having such a, magnanimous person, a caring person, and a how. Okay. So if you want to be a real CEO one day, you're going to have to start learning the who like I'm trying to learn.
Man,
But it's
thank
the
you so
how
much.
that's done that. And it's just so impressive to see what you did, and it's well deserved. And you're just such a good, warm, wonderful person. And I think that our, there was no happenstance now, right? Think about just people listening to this podcast, how many people we're going to help.
Yeah.
If you're a business person, if you're a business entrepreneur, don't give up. Go for it. Find some more who's though.
Yeah. Find the who's.
Find a couple more who's. Don't take my example. Even my son said the other day, he said, I noticed that you used to like mow the lawn, right? And I said, well, I got some he's like, and now you're like, I shouldn't be doing that. I have other time. He's like, there's things around the house that I used to just like move furniture unwieldy. And he's like, I noticed that you started to put more time into the who so you can build your organization stronger. And I'm like, oh, pretty good observation. So the entrepreneurs out there, get your idea, balance the right amount of how with the who. Get some capital if you can, like once you get to that first state, because I've done I guess I'm happy I did it this way now in retrospect, but it nearly killed me.
Yeah.
And the lessons to learn.
For
So,
sure.
well then you've basically promised you're going to come back. And so, I look forward to more conversations. I may be checking you out here just to understand a little bit more what it's like on the patient side.
Yeah, and you're going to come back. You're going to come on our podcast because we're going to talk about
100%.
eyesight and glucose levels and some of the things that just blew my mind when I watched people changing their diet.
Yeah, 100%. I'm excited for it. I'm
Awesome.
excited for it.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
If you've made it this far, then I have to thank you for your time. I hope you've learned something new and enjoyed listening to the discussion as much as I enjoyed having it. I'd love to hear from you about the show because we're working really hard to bring you great content and the feedback really helps us get better. If you like what you've heard or watched, for those of you who are streaming out on YouTube, then take a split second to give us a thumbs up or a like. It really helps other people like you find the show too. And no one likes to miss out on the good stuff, so go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't have to wonder when or if there's a new episode. And until next time, stay remarkable.